No problem.
All right. Thanks everybody for taking the time. This is the first spring practice press conference with Coach Defensive Coordinator Tim DeRuyter. We'll go ahead and get started right into questions. Media, as some of you already have, please use the raise hand function to get in line to ask a question. I will call on you. Please unmute your line and then ask your question and then remute your line. We'll go ahead and get started with James Crepia from the Oregonian. James, go ahead.
Tim, take me into the install process a little bit. Mario mentioned a marrying of terminology. What made you want to do that? How much did you keep from Andy in terms of terms? Because I understand that's not exactly how you always went about it, whether it be a Cal or Fresno and stuff. It was more of a total overhaul and implementation of things. So how much did you keep in that regard, and how much have you had to learn to retain from them, and how important have Ken and Marcel been to the process since they know your system?
Yeah. We did a lot of really good things a year ago, and a lot of the things that Coach Avalos's defense and what we're going to do this fall are very, very similar. And so some of those things I wanted to keep the terminology. And so guys had a familiarity with it, but we do some things differently. And so obviously those terms are going to change. Everywhere I've gone, you have to change it because people that you've been with before, then they know your book. So it's a little bit more of a chore on me, and I'd rather put it on me than our players. But we are teaching them a different language. There's a pretty good carryover in part of our packages, but we're going to bring some concepts in that they had not done before. And so it's a combination of the two. And, you mentioned Ken and mentioned Marcel. Those guys have been absolutely invaluable. Ken I worked with back in the past at Nevada. And so a lot of our concepts that we did back then were in fact, some of those things that I hadn't done the last few years, we're bringing some of those things back. And then obviously with Marcel being with us last year, having him understand, what we are looking for coverage wise, because it is going to be a little bit different, has been invaluable having him in here.
Next question, Eric Scopel, 24/7 Sports.
Coach, I was wondering, obviously new defense, new groups here. Any players cross-training that in spots they haven't in the past? Anybody straight up moving spots? We're not at practice to watch, but just anybody kind of lining up in places they haven't in the past.
I don't believe so, but what we do in our system is we teach a bunch of job swapping. We're going to have outside backers that are going to be defensive linemen and vice versa. We're going to have safeties that'll be edge players. We'll have edge players that'll be overhang players. I think it's healthy. We're going to have guys like Noah who will be his traditional inside linebacker, but we're also going to walk him up the line of scrimmage and bring him off edges. I think there's a lot of talent on our defense that we want to be able to use different tools, try to make it simple for them, but make it difficult for our offenses to figure it out. But take advantage of the tools that the really talented guys have here.
AJ Jacobson, Rivals.
Coach, you kind of just spoke to this just a little bit, but I was just going to ask you, just in broad strokes, looking at the talent pool you've got here at Oregon, now that you've had the chance to wrap your hand around the players and everything, what do you think the strengths are going to be that you're going to be able to take advantage of this season?
Well, I'll tell you, I think we've got some talent at all three levels. Up front, I really like our edges with Kayvon and Mace. I think they do a really nice job, setting edges. They're guys that can play in space. They're athletic enough to do that. Obviously at the second level, our inside linebacker core is really, really, I think, deep. We've got some veteran players that have played a lot of football that are, really good football players in Drew and Isaac. And then you've got the younger guys who are really, really talented pushing them. So, really nice, culture there. On the back end, I think our corners did a nice job developing. I think we've got speed. We've recruited a bunch of length. And some of the new guys coming in have been impressive so far. So really like, the talent pool. And the other thing that's been really impressive to me coming in is our guys know how to practice. Coach Cristobal has established a program here and a standard of how we have to do things with a sense of urgency and a physicality. And so sometimes you go into a brand new program, like in places I've been to in the past, and you got to kind of establish that. That's really been for the most part established here. We're going to tweak things a little bit, but that is been really important for us to get this thing to where we wanted to go.
Ryan Thorburn, register guard.
Hey, Tim, as you were kind of alluding to, there's a lot of experience at most of the position groups on the defense, but you guys do lose Jordan and Austin from the interior of the defensive line. A lot of players that have been around for a while, but are still young in eligibility. What are kind of your first impressions of that group?
Well, I think we've got an athletic, hungry group, and you're right. There is a lot of youth there. It's hard to tell on 2 no padded days. Everybody looks pretty good when every tackle is made when you get near somebody. Once we get the pads on next week, particularly up front, we'll have a better feel for those guys. But Popo and Brandon Dorless, both those guys have been impressive so far to me. We'll see how the other guys, today, a couple guys flashed, Christian did some good things, and Keon Ware's done some good things. So, seeing those guys develop and play with physicality next week, once pads come on, that'll be, important for us to gauge.
Max Torres, Ducks Digest.
Coach, good morning. Want to learn a little bit about kind of your goals when you're looking at spring football. Notably, you guys are still pretty early in this process, but when you're installing your defense here, what are some of your goals that you want to take away from spring football to have it be a success?
Well, we talked about our team, our unit there the other day before we started. We want to establish our brand of football, and we want to establish the Oregon Duck defense as one who's going to, number one, take the ball away. That's our primary goal, is to take the ball away. Knowing that you can't do that every single play. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to defense that prides itself in stopping the run. All good defenses have to start there. And so, our guys have to understand that. We've got to be really good situational players, which means we got to get off the field on 3rd down. We got to understand the tightness of the field down in the red zone and play great red zone defense. And ultimately, you've got to win the takeaway battle. So no matter how many offensive turnovers we got to have at least +1 to win the football game and win the turnover battle.
Back to James Crepia, Oregonian.
Tim, specifically at a couple of spots, personnel-wise, in terms of differentiating on the D-line, who are the 3, 4-eye, 5? Who are those guys specifically? Because you're about 8 to 10 deep in the interior, but who's in the 3, 4-eye, 5 group? Who's at Sam, and in the boundary and the secondary, who's competing at the 2 boundary spots?
Well, we're doing things a little bit differently. Like I mentioned before, with the job swapping, we're going to have a bunch of guys play from 3 technique out. And so we'll have a group of those guys. We have a couple different personnel groupings that'll go. And so depending on which grouping we have what we'll call our big guys, and Coach Salavea, primarily coaches those guys. I don't have my roster here in front of me that I can see. I apologize with the depth chart. Have we put out a depth chart yet? And for right now, to be honest with you, it's just an organization chart. There is no set depth. And I think it's always healthy in the springtime to do that. As far as the back end, we're going to be having, really, we won't be field and boundary till the fall. We're going to have left corners and left safeties, and, right corners and right safeties. And then what that ultimately does is it develops the depth of your team, where the best players, regardless if they're a boundary or field safety, get on the field as injuries happen. So this spring's a chance for us to look at a bunch of guys in different positions, whether they're going to be, an overhang player, a 5 technique, a 3, or a 0.
Eric Scopel, 24/7.
Ask you a little bit about the cornerback position. I think we all know quite a bit about McHale and DJ. We've seen them. Brian Addison, somebody we've seen at receiver in the past. I guess at 6'5", kind of how does he fit there? And then some of the freshmen who we haven't seen in the past, kind of early returns on those guys.
Yeah, we're only 2 days in, but Brian, we're actually looking at safety right now. And, I think that's probably more of a natural fit for him. But we've got, Triquez out there at corner. Jalen Davies has flashed a little bit outside at the corner spot, one of the new guys coming in. You know, the more we go through some stuff, because I haven't looked at the back end except for one practice, so it's hard to judge things based on one. But Scoop had a really nice practice on Tuesday when we opened up as a safety. He's a guy that can really run and cover. So I'm excited to see when pads come on with him. If that was just something that he runs around, does 7-7 well, or is that, is he a guy that'll put his face on you? But I've been excited by that young talent that we have brought in. And, Dante, now watching him get out there and run, he's got a different gear than most guys out there. So getting him in the mix and not being dinged up, he's been fun to watch out there as well.
Got time for a couple more. Let's go back to Ryan Thorburn, register guard.
Obviously, Marcel has a lot of experience in the Pac-12, and you're quite familiar with him, having worked with him. What strengths does he bring to the staff? Why was he a good fit here at Oregon?
Well, number one, I think he's an excellent teacher. He's a guy that again has that experience in the league, has seen it. He's been able to coach some guys at an elite level. I think he takes a great deal of pride in investing time in his players so that they know that he cares about them both on and off the field. And because he invests so much, they trust him. And ultimately, that's what we've got to have is players trust coaches, coaches trust players, so that we can get the most out of them. And I think he does a tremendous job with that. He's a guy that brings great ideas to the staff room. He's a great staff guy. And on top of all that, he's a great recruiter. So I thought he was a home run bringing him in.
AJ Jacobson.
Coach, you of all people understand the importance of leadership for a unit, but tell me who's emerging on your defensive side that's going to provide that leadership this year.
Well, we're still early in the process, but we challenge the entire defense. When a new set of eyes comes in, guys have new opportunities. When a new defense starts, because last year's defense was last year. This is this year's defense. Who's going to step up? I think Kayvon wants to be that guy. Yeah, I've challenged him to be that guy because of his talent. Guys are naturally going to look up to him. And now it's, a chance for him to put the team a little bit on his shoulder. A lot of times the inside linebacker position can do that. I think Noah, even being a young guy, you see him flash and do things the right way. I think he's going to be very, very important as a leader in there. I think Isaac's a quiet leader in that way. On the back end, I think Verone McKinley does a really nice job of understanding what we want to do and holding guys to a standard.
Last one for you, Coach. Let's go back to James Prepia.
Tim, just hearing about just the high volume of personnel packages that you have, you alluded to it a little bit. How many will you try to install here in the spring as opposed to wait for the fall? And just with all of them, how important is aggression to getting not just the buy-in now and showing that now, but then obviously the results, until you can get the games, you don't have them. But how important is the fact that you do have an aggressive style with so many packages that leads itself to buy-in?
Well, we're going to probably do 3 or 4 packages depending on personnel groupings our offense are going to show us. But obviously the key is having our guys play as fast and as physically as they possibly can. If you're bogging them down mentally, then I'm doing something wrong. And so, we're going to try to make these different defensive packages where 1 or 2 guys are pulled out, but the other, 8, 9 guys, 10 guys are the same guys doing the same thing. So one of the advantages of having, really talented guys that are kind of combo guys, we can have different sets of guys on the field, and an offense isn't sure what front you're going to be. Are you going to be an odd? Or are you going to be an even? And we'll be able to bounce back and forth doing that with some of the guys we have on the field. So, I know it's kind of a lot of gobbledygook a little bit until you see it. But, obviously I don't want to give away everything we're doing, but, if we're playing slow, that's on me. One of the biggest things we're emphasizing, besides taking the ball away, is hauling our tails to the ball. And when you have guys thinking because they're not sure what to do, you become from a good team to a very average, and from an average to a very bad team in a hurry with guys thinking. And we're going to try like hell not to do that. And, it's up to me and our defensive staff to make sure we look at our guys, see if they're, grasping everything before we keep putting things in.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate all you guys. We'll see y'all soon.